They say that managing a luxury hotel is basically babysitting wealthy adults who possess unlimited credit and severe superiority complexes. I learned this the hard way after clawing my way out of financial ruin to build the Whispering Palms, an elite boutique resort on the coast. My daily routine involves supervising high society nonsense from my glass office overlooking the grand lobby. However, a single incoming reservation on a chaotic Tuesday morning was about to change everything by resurrecting a ghost from my past. My event coordinator Delilah entered my office holding a dense corporate file with an expression of pure dread. She explained that a massive commercial entity called Vanguard Logistics wanted a full resort buyout for a holiday weekend. They were requesting the most expensive package but demanded to bypass our elite pastry chef to bring an outside cake. When I scanned the paperwork, my breath caught as I recognized the names of the bride and groom hidden within the corporate rider. The groom was Preston Vance, my former fiancé who ruined my life half a decade ago. We were equal partners in a booming catering enterprise until he secretly dismantled the corporation behind my back. Preston took our entire client list and left me to drown in massive business debts while he vanished with his young marketing assistant. Now, the very man who forced me into a moldy studio apartment was trying to book my masterpiece venue for his new wedding. Delilah asked if we should reject the application since the situation was deeply personal and potentially explosive. I closely examined the signatures and realized Preston utilized a generic management firm to secure the ballroom. He had absolutely no idea that I owned this luxury establishment because I reclaimed my maiden name, Gwen Harrison, after our devastating split. A cold wave of determination washed over me as I realized my ex was walking blindly into my territory. I instructed Delilah to accept the contract immediately and send them our most extravagant welcome arrangement. Turning away his money would allow him to enjoy a flawless celebration at another venue down the street without consequences. Hidden deep within our standard rules was a specific clause regarding the misrepresentation of party identities for commercial advantages. Preston used his shell company to secure a discounted corporate rate, which meant he was already violating my strict terms. To ensure absolute control over the unfolding drama, I designated myself as the lead logistics coordinator for their weekend. I explicitly ordered my staff to keep my ownership secret so I could observe the wedding party without detection. I wanted to remain completely invisible while orchestrating the background operations of the grand ballroom. Preston believed he was simply renting a beautiful backdrop, but he was actually purchasing a premium ticket to his own destruction. 2 weeks later, the arrogant couple arrived at the resort for their mandatory venue walkthrough. I disguised myself in the standard black uniform of the floor staff and held a plain clipboard near the entrance. Preston looked exactly the same, dressed in a designer suit while aggressively barking orders into his mobile phone. His new bride, Channing Thorne, radiated an intense and abrasive energy that immediately soured the atmosphere of the room. Channing loudly complained that the ballroom appeared much smaller than the online pictures while ignoring the historic architecture. When Delilah introduced me as a basic member of the setup crew, the gaze of Preston swept right past me. He looked directly at my face but failed to recognize the woman he spent 6 years damaging. My new dark hairstyle and reading glasses provided the perfect camouflage, transforming me into a dangerous ghost. The demanding bride began ordering absurd modifications, including the complete removal of our imported Italian velvet draperies. When I politely explained that the fabrics were essential for the sound engineering of the musical performance, she scoffed in disgust. Channing then marched over to a young banquet captain named Matteo and aggressively knocked a salad fork onto the floor. She demanded that we eliminate the proper silverware because she felt the table arrangement looked cluttered. I calmly intervened to explain that proper multi-course service required specific utensils to avoid major dining delays. Channing spun around with absolute fury, demanding to know why a mere servant was offering an unsolicited opinion. She looked at Preston for support, and he merely waved his hand dismissively while telling me to obey her wishes. Their mutual entitlement confirmed that they regarded the hard-working hotel staff as disposable tools rather than human beings. After their chaotic departure, I marched directly to the second-floor office of my corporate legal counsel, Kendall. He was already analyzing the financial details of Vanguard Logistics and confirmed a massive irregularity. The substantial deposit check was signed by the company treasurer, who happened to be the former mistress of Preston. My ex was using corporate funds to finance his personal wedding, which clearly violated our strict commercial usage policies. Kendall suggested canceling the contract immediately to avoid unnecessary complications, but I refused to grant them an easy escape. Canceling the reservation now would allow Preston to paint me as a bitter antagonist who sabotaged his romance. I wanted the infraction to occur publicly during the actual celebration where his misconduct would be completely undeniable. I intended to enforce our strict behavior guidelines the exact moment they crossed the line on my property. As I walked through the service corridors, I greeted Juana, a dedicated housekeeper whose medical expenses I quietly covered. I built my business on mutual respect and fair compensation because I remembered the pain of financial exploitation. Preston viewed employees as mere line items to be reduced, whereas I valued the humanity of my team. I made sure Delilah added a strict code of conduct addendum to the final agreement, which the couple signed without reading. The designated wedding Saturday arrived with oppressive coastal humidity and a palpable sense of impending doom. The grand ballroom looked undeniably spectacular, adorned with cascading white orchids and soft amber illumination that masked the tension. Preston stood near a massive ice sculpture, drinking expensive scotch and laughing far too loudly to project false confidence. Meanwhile, Channing patrolled the room like a hostile inspector, checking camera angles instead of enjoying her celebration. During the busy dinner transition, Juana carefully navigated the floor while balancing a heavy tray of delicate crystal glassware. Channing suddenly spun around in her voluminous gown and collided heavily with the unsuspecting worker, sending glasses shattering across the marble. Instead of showing concern, the bride erupted in screaming insults and demanded that Juana be terminated immediately. Preston joined the tirade, loudly threatening to ruin the reputation of the hotel over the minor accident. I stepped out of the shadows and signaled Kendall to pull the formal termination document from his jacket. Preston froze as I removed my glasses, his face turning entirely pale as recognition finally dawned on him. I informed the stunned couple that their contract was officially terminated effective immediately due to gross misconduct and financial misrepresentation. The security team marched into the ballroom to escort the shouting wedding party out into the pouring rain. The venue retained the entire non-refundable $150,000 deposit according to the explicit terms they signed. Preston ruined his corporate reputation and faced severe scrutiny for misappropriating company funds for personal use. I used the massive windfall to fund substantial holiday bonuses from my entire hardworking staff who endured the nonsense. True justice is not always swift, but watching my abuser face the consequences of his arrogance was incredibly sweet. Standing by my office window overlooking the quiet ocean, I realized that true success is the ultimate answer to betrayal. I no longer carried the heavy burden of past resentment because I had completely reclaimed my power and my dignity. The world does not bend to the entitled, and arrogance eventually creates its own downfall. I built an empire from the ashes of his deceit, and he paid for the final brick.